Hey, my name is Salman. I am a Microsoft intern, and today we will be covering the behavioral interview. Why is the behavioral interview particularly important? Because this may be when you're up against majority of the candidates who have been screened by their CV. You want to be able to show them that you are up for the job, that you have the competency to be able to carry out the task that they have within this role. So virtual interviews are even harder nowadays. You don't really have the opportunity to connect with the recruiter other than a 30-minute window where you're just on Teams call and you are potentially just staring awkwardly into a camera. You don't know how to act. Body language is a bit harder to exuberate and show to a recruiter. But when you're on site, you have the opportunity to walk around, you can go have lunch, you get to see them before the interview perhaps, you might be waiting and have a small bit of chit chat before you go into the room. It's quite a relaxed environment, but with this whole new shift towards virtual environments, this video will help you get that STAR framework and CAR framework up to date. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. This takes a lot of time and I'm doing this all for you. First of all, what is a behavioral question? A behavioral question comes in the forms of, tell me about a time when, give me an instance when you had to do X, Y, Z. Have you ever? Tell me an instance when. One example could be, tell me about a time where you had to deal with a difficult member within your team. Now, immediately, just think about how you would respond to that question. If you start by saying, well, I had to deal with a difficult team member and it was really hard, I just approached them. Stop right there, because this is where we're going to start with the STAR technique. So it's a 4-step simple process. You have situation, task, action, and result. Okay, situation, task, these ones you want to be fairly brief. So you start off with a situation. You want to have, I guess, a few examples, whether it be personal, job, or educational experience, where you've had to deal with this. STAR, which is situation. Start off by telling them the environment, who you were working with, what you were working on, because they don't know anything. Okay, you may assume they know what you're talking about, but they literally know nothing about your project at all, unless perhaps they saw it on your CV, but assume they have no knowledge. So let's take, for example, a question, tell me about a time when you had to work with someone who wasn't very good with time and they weren't punctual. So let's start with this framework. So the situation was that I was in university, I was working with 3 other people on a group project to create a website. Okay, so I have talked about where. So it was in university with 3 other people. And what was it? It was to create a project. Okay, next you state the task or the problem you had. So in this case I would say, so we had a member who wouldn't turn up to meetings, he would be 5 minutes late or either didn't come to meetings at all. Okay, there you go. You've literally said like 2 to 3 sentences mentioning your situation and your task. You want to make sure you keep that brief, because the majority of your answer for these behavioral questions should then come in the action part. So the action part is where I will start talking about the step-by-step process as to how I dealt with this, and emphasis is put onto I. You want to talk about what you did as an individual and not what your team did to deal with the situation. So I, for example, could say, so I knew this individual wasn't coming to meetings, so I looked into whether or not he had timetable clashes within his calendar, but I normally always would check beforehand, but these meetings were set up quite early in advance, so perhaps he had meetings which were popping up last minute and they were quite ad hoc. But then I checked again and I made sure everything was okay and it seemed to be fine. So the next step I took was I thought I should go and ask him on a one-to-one basis. Now I first did ask him over text message if he was okay and if he would be available for a quick call. I then called him when he was free later on in the day, and I was able to find out that he was having some things going on personally that he couldn't really tell to the rest of the group. So really putting him in a situation where I told him, hey, everything you say to me is confidential, I won't tell the rest of the group, you're all safe and sound with what I can assure you. We were able to come to the consensus that we should have virtual meetings instead. We should try to make it so that we're in a better position to navigate the time that we're going through and make sure that everything's easily accessible for him. So in the forthcoming meetings, all of them moved virtual. We had a transition. Everyone was happy with the idea. And yeah, that was it. Notice how I used I there a lot? Now we have this sort of transition, which we can go into a result by saying, finishing our action with, okay, we came to the consensus that we would move and change the format of our meetings to virtual. As a result, now we were able to have more frequent meetings. The individual was able to come with a more lively manner. He was able to have more input, and as a result, we were able to achieve more as a team. We had 20% increase in our productivity according to our Kanban board, and overall we got a first class in our project. Really wrapping it up and tying everything together to show that there was a positive change in each of these scenarios is what you want to do. So make sure you actually use this technique. This is very, very useful in any sort of behavioral question. Even in technical interviews, Microsoft themselves has recommended to use the STAR technique in technical interviews in this video. But let's take, for example, another question where we are like, tell me about a time when you had to work with a group of people to have a presentation with little to no preparation. We had a little bit of rhyme there. So yes, they have given you a broad scenario of creating a presentation for a group of people with no preparation or little preparation. Now you want to give them that situation. So this could be again in university, or you could say in a job scenario. For example, I could say, so I was in my last job, I was working with 5 other individuals to present a group project to potential stakeholders with 5 minutes on the clock. We were tasked to give them a demo of our product in which they would be taking on for the next few months if it were successful. So that was clearly being very specific about the situation and the task. Now the action, okay, so remember, use I a lot in the action. So immediately I was aware of the time, so I took on the responsibility of being a timekeeper. So I said, hey, we have 5 minutes on the clock. I know that we also need someone who can take notes, so 1 minute before we can all revisit and come to a final decision on who's going to present and wrap up anything for the final presentation. So that's immediately I'm saying I'm taking on a responsibility, and I'm also showing that I'm able to delegate responsibilities onto someone else. So I said by about 1 minute we should know exactly what sort of thing we should be demoing, what features we should and shouldn't be. Okay, so I will give you a 10-second warning. So by the end of the first minute, because we had these 2 main ideas we wanted to cover, we split into 2 groups, and I said by the second minute, let's recoup and make sure we're still on the same page and not going too divergent. So by the second minute, I did this and so on and so on. Eventually, when we were at the 4th minute, as I said at the beginning, again, I gave them a heads up about 20 seconds this time. I said, okay, now let's revisit our notes and make sure we covered everything, make sure we're not missing any things out. I also wanted to make sure that everyone had an equal opportunity to speak only if they wanted to, because everyone has their areas of comfort. So we made any final touches, and I gave the team a good team boost of morale. And yeah, and that's pretty much it in terms of managing the team in that situation. We ended up delivering a really great presentation. Everyone was able to do handovers really well. We all had a good idea of what we were presenting, and we covered all aspects, and the stakeholders were really intrigued, and they contacted us the next week to have another talk. So that's a really good example again of a STAR technique. Because this video is getting a bit long, I'm gonna wrap up here. But yeah, make sure you do leave a like, comment and subscribe. I hope you did enjoy this. If you do put this into practice, hopefully you will get past this behavioral interview and get through to the final stages of whatever you're going for. I hope you all enjoyed. Leave a like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.